The question was really just, how big of a slowdown were they going to encounter? And I think, we really saw that impact today. They did a pretty big changeover in China by getting that facility ready to produce what is not a dramatically new version of the Model 3, but certainly something that required some downtime to get new tooling in. And they've also had some downtime here in Austin as they have been getting things ready to start production of the Cybertruck. So, I think you're right. They telegraphed it. I think it was just a little bit of surprise to Wall Street, maybe not to Tesla, how much of a miss it was.
Sean, you said Cybertruck, so I got to ask you about the Cybertruck.
Sure.
This thing was unveiled years ago. Is it actually going to start production in the fourth quarter this year?
You never know with Tesla, right? But yeah, I think we're probably going to see some limited production. I mean, even Elon Musk has said that they're not going to be in volume production for this thing until next year at some point. But we're seeing a lot of signs that they're actually getting close to that. There are some, people who follow the company really closely, investors or fans who've been flying drones over the factory here in Austin who have seen some crash-tested Cybertrucks. We've seen some sort of, what they call release candidates, which is pretty close to production quality, driving out in the wild. So that they're doing crash tests is a pretty good sign that they feel comfortable with the level that they're at, and they're ready to start maybe shipping some of them soon, even if they are missing the third quarter target the most recent deadline they've given themselves.
All right, not to shame on toddlers, but sometimes it feels like watching Elon is like watching a toddler. He's like kind of all over the place. So Max Chafkin, come on in on here. We've got, the delivery news. We've got Bill Ackman out there on CNBC, maybe, I don't know, regarding X. And then you've got Elon Musk last night streaming. How do you think about him?
Well, so I am not a Diablo expert. All I can say is that, for months, Twitter, now the company now known as X, has been, trying to find ways to justify itself, trying to find ways to essentially turn the company around, turn perceptions about the company around, both among advertisers and users. And I think that is the most important asset that the company has is Elon Musk and Elon Musk's own feed. And so logging on to X to live stream a video game, as he did the other night, or going to the border in Texas, as he did I believe it was on Friday, and sort of trying to, do kind of like a weird political magazine thing. It's all about just finding ways to change the narrative here. I don't think it's totally clear that it's working, although the company definitely wants to. We have Linda Yaccarino set to meet with bankers later in the week, and of course this kind of long-running question about how long it's going to take for advertisers to sort of come back in big numbers.
But Max, is there any indication that he's built a viable business now that he's let so many people go and changed the product so much since he took it private?
Well, I think it's possible. The other day...
Are we putting the cart before the horse here with talking about taking this company public?
The most important asset that, as I said, the most important asset this company has is Elon Musk's following. As we know, Elon Musk is amazing at getting public market investors to put money into speculative investments. Here we are talking about the Cybertruck, this thing that, as you said, is years delayed. And investors are still sort of, okay with it. So from Bill Ackman's point of view, Ackman, of course, is basically has this investment vehicle that's a lot like an IPO. He needs a candidate company. If he were somehow able to persuade Elon Musk to, work with him on a SPARC deal, it's called a SPARC. It's basically a lot like an IPO or somewhere between an IPO and a SPAC. And if you were able to persuade Elon Musk to stay as CEO, that would probably, go over well with public market shareholders. There still are a lot of fans of Elon Musk at the moment. Right? Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, I do wonder, too, in terms of there's always, I feel like when we talk about Elon, that he's got his hands in too many pots, although he seems to do well with it. But there is always that point when there's maybe some concerns. It's like, well, wait a minute, maybe he's just doing too much. What are investors, thinking about how Tesla kind of longer term in terms of where it's going? Is it still on track?
I mean, I think there's always questions from some investors about succession planning and sort of the roadmap. I think it'll be really interesting to see if those questions resurface in any sort of tangible way on this call later this month as they discuss the third quarter results because this is going to be the first one since we find out that the CFO, Zach Kirkhorn, is leaving. And that's one of the big sort of questions hanging over the company right now. And over the last couple of weeks is what are the circumstances of that departure? Zach is someone who was making promises that, gross margins were going to stay at a certain level and that, all the price cuts earlier this year really weren't going to eat into the business. And then that wound up actually not being exactly the case. And then a couple months later, he's out saying he's out the door. So I think there are, maybe more than recently over the last couple of months or a year or so, we're probably going to hear more of those questions about it. But, broadly, I don't think we see too much doubt in the outlook for them because the stock still sort of holds, and they've been able to deliver the vehicles that they have on the road in pretty sizable numbers.
Right,
especially
stock
compared
still
to any
has
of the
doubled this
competition.
year. Yeah.
Hey, Sean, give me like 30 seconds on the Cybertruck here because this thing is really important for Tesla, and it's entering a market that's dominated by Ford and GM that Japanese automakers have tried to enter and dominate, and they've failed.
It's really a great unknown. I mean, there clearly seems to be a lot of interest. How much of that is just people liking to joke about how they have a pre-order in for it or not is kind of hard to tell.
Yeah.
But there's so much that we don't know about it. We don't really know the final base price because that's obviously going to be going up by the company's own admission. We don't know, how well it's going to perform in these crash tests. Steel is pretty heavy and pretty rigid compared to the cars that we're used to these days that crumple up pretty easily to be able to displace all that energy. I'm sure Elon Musk would say, hey, look, we've got autopilot and maybe full self-driving down the road. We're not going to need that. But I think there's just a lot we need to know, and that's one of the reasons that this delivery event, whenever it happens, is going to be so key to watch. How much more information do we get?
Got about 35 seconds
Yeah,
left.
and there's also the question of demand. I mean, going back 6 months or so, we were talking a lot about are Tesla buyers getting tired of Elon's antics? Is there demand for these things? Price cuts, these massive price cuts on the Model 3 and Model Y in particular, have clearly helped address that problem, if it even was a problem. But the Cybertruck presents, a new challenge, right? This is a very, very different looking car, a very different car from what the average truck buyer is into. And it's not clear that the, combination of video games and weighing in on immigration policy is necessarily the best way to reach, the average truck buyer.
But it's pretty normal if you're Elon.
Definitely the best way to reach an Elon fan.